My name is Mary Matthews and I am 73 years old. What I'm about to share happened just 6 months ago, and it changed everything I thought I knew about my family, my late husband, and the life we built together in our small town of Millbrook. Before we go on, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe to the channel Vintage Vengeance Stories. We're building a community of incredible women who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now back to the story. For 45 years, I lived in the same two-story colonial house on Maple Street. My husband Robert and I raised our daughter Sarah there. We painted every room, planted every flower in the garden, and created countless memories within those walls. Robert passed away 3 years ago from a sudden heart attack, leaving me alone in that big house with nothing but memories and a retirement check that barely covered the bills. Sarah, my only daughter, had always been the light of my life. She married David 5 years ago, a charming man who worked in real estate. First I was thrilled. David seemed to truly care about Sarah, and I thought he might become the son I never had. How wrong I was. After Robert's funeral, Sarah and David started visiting more often. At first I was grateful for the company. The house felt so empty without Robert's laughter echoing through the halls. But soon their visits felt different. They weren't coming to check on me, they were studying my house, my finances, my vulnerability. It began with small suggestions. "Mom, this house is far too big for you," Sarah would say, running her finger along the dusty mantel. "You could move into a nice retirement community. Think of all the friends you'd make." David nodded, adding, "Mary, just the upkeep must be draining you. Property taxes, heating bills, repairs. Wouldn't it be easier to sell and finally have some financial security?" At first I brushed off their concerns. This was my home, my sanctuary filled with Robert's memories. But as the months went on, their suggestions grew more insistent, more urgent. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday in March. I was battling a leak in the basement when Sarah and David showed up unannounced. I was frustrated, tired, overwhelmed by the never-ending problems that seemed to pile up daily. "Mom, we need to talk," Sarah said, settling into Robert's old armchair. David sat beside her on the sofa, a manila folder in his hands. "We've been doing some research," David began, his voice gentle yet firm. "There's a beautiful senior community called Sunset Manor just 20 minutes from here. They usually have a waiting list, but I know someone who can get you a spot." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes filled with what I thought was genuine concern. "Mom, you're 73. What if something happens to you here all alone? What if you fall down the stairs? What if there's another leak that causes serious damage?" Her words planted seeds of doubt in my mind. I was feeling increasingly isolated and weighed down. The house did feel too big, too quiet, too full of ghosts. "But this is my home," I whispered, glancing around at the family photos covering the walls, the blanket Robert's mother had knitted draped across the sofa. "It will always be your home in your heart," Sarah said, squeezing my hand. "But Mom, you're sitting on a gold mine. This property is worth at least $400,000. You could sell it, move somewhere safe and comfortable, and still have money left over for anything you might need." David opened his folder and spread papers across the coffee table. "I already had a preliminary appraisal done. The market is hot right now. We could list it next week and probably have multiple offers within days." I stared at the papers, my head spinning. "You had an appraisal done?" "Without asking me. We wanted accurate information before talking to you," David explained. "We're thinking about your future, your safety." Over the next few weeks, their campaign only intensified. They painted vivid pictures of my possible future. Falling and lying helpless for days, the house crumbling around me, my savings drained by endless repairs. Every objection I raised, they countered with logic. When I worried about leaving my neighbors, they reminded me that most of my old friends had either moved away or passed on. When I mentioned my garden, they pointed out that I could barely keep up with it anymore. When I spoke about Robert's memory being tied to the house, they gently suggested that his memory lived in my heart, not in bricks and mortar. Slowly, painfully, I began to consider their proposal. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was being stubborn and impractical. Maybe selling the house really was the smart thing to do. The retirement home they showed me was indeed lovely. Sunset Manor had a beautiful dining room, organized activities, and friendly staff. The apartment they offered was small but cozy, with a view of a neatly kept garden. The monthly fee would eat up most of the house sale proceeds, but as David pointed out, it included everything: Meals, utilities, basic medical care, social activities. You'd never have to worry about a thing again, Sarah said as we toured the facility. No more leaky basements, no more heating bills, no more fears about break-ins or medical emergencies. On a Thursday afternoon in April, I signed the papers. The house sold within a week to a young family with twins. Closing was set for May 15th. As moving day approached, I began sorting through 45 years of accumulated belongings. Sarah and David were incredibly helpful, bringing boxes and helping me decide what to keep, what to donate, what to throw away. "Mom, you can't take everything," Sarah said gently as I hesitated over Robert's collection of woodworking tools. "The apartment is small. You need to focus on the essentials." Most of Robert's belongings went to Goodwill. His clothes, his books, his tools, his records. Decades of a man's life packed into cardboard boxes and carted off in David's truck. I was left with a small collection of items that would fit in my new apartment. A few clothes, some jewelry, important documents, and a handful of photographs. Everything else that had made up my life was gone. Well, almost everything. In the far corner of Robert's workshop, behind his old workbench, I found a wooden box that had somehow gone unnoticed all these years. It was the size of a shoebox, made of dark walnut with intricate carvings along the edges. The craftsmanship was beautiful. Clearly Robert's work, though I had never seen it before. When I picked it up, I noticed my name carved in delicate, elegant letters on the underside. For Mary. Open only if something happens. With all my love, Robert. My heart skipped a beat. Robert had left me something. Something he wanted me to find only in a moment of crisis. But what could it be? And why had I never seen this box before? I decided not to mention it to Sarah and David. Something about their eagerness to clear out the house, their insistence that I didn't need most of my belongings, made me want to keep this discovery private. I slipped the wooden box into my handbag and forgot about it in the chaos of the final packing. Closing day arrived faster than I could have imagined. I sat in the attorney's office, signing paper after paper, watching as ownership of my home was transferred to strangers. The check was substantial. $420,000, more money than I had ever seen at once. But I wouldn't see much of it. As we left the attorney's office, David turned to me with an apologetic smile. "Mary, we need to discuss the financial arrangements." "What do you mean?" I asked, clutching my purse that held the cashier's check. Sarah looked uneasy. "Mom, David and I have been talking. We're worried about you managing that much money. What if someone takes advantage of you? What if you make bad investment choices?" David nodded. "We think it would be safer if we manage the money for you. We've already set up a trust. You'll receive a monthly allowance that more than covers your expenses at Sunset Manor, and will handle all the investments and financial decisions." I stared at them, feeling the ground tilt beneath my feet. "You want to control my money?" "Not control, Mom," Sarah said quickly. "Manage. Protect. There are so many scams targeting the elderly these days. This way you'll never have to worry about losing everything to some con artist." Before I fully understood what was happening, I was signing more papers. The proceeds from the house sale were deposited into an account I couldn't access. David explained that I would receive $2,000 a month. Enough for the apartment fee and a little spending money. "And what about emergencies?" I asked. "What if I need medical care or I want to travel or something expensive comes up?" "Just ask us," David said smoothly. "We'll evaluate each situation and make sure you have what you need." As we drove to my new apartment at Sunset Manor, the reality sank in. I had been stripped of everything. My home, my independence, my financial security. I was now completely dependent on my daughter and son-in-law for every financial decision in my life. The apartment at Sunset Manor was exactly as they had shown me, yet it felt like a prison cell. Everything was beige and institutional. The view was pleasant, but it wasn't my view. The meals were adequate, but they weren't cooked in my kitchen. The activities were cheerful and organized, but they felt forced, artificial. I spent the first few weeks in a daze trying to adjust to my new reality. The other residents were kind enough, but most were dealing with serious health or memory issues. I felt out of place, too healthy, too aware, too trapped financially to leave. It was during my third week at Sunset Manor that I remembered the wooden box. I had unpacked it along with my few personal belongings, but I hadn't thought about it since the chaos of the move. That night, after another unsatisfying dinner in the communal dining hall, I sat in my small living room and really looked at the box for the first time. The carving was even more intricate than I had realized. The walnut had been polished to a deep, rich shine, and the design included delicate roses and vines that reminded me of our wedding day. Robert had always been talented with his hands, but this was art beyond anything I had ever seen him create. The inscription on the bottom was carved in his familiar handwriting. For Mary, open only if something happens. With all my love, Robert. Well, something had certainly happened. I had lost everything. With trembling fingers, I unlatched the small brass clasp and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in a bed of faded blue velvet, was a pocket watch. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, crafted from gold with intricate engravings covering every surface. The dial was white porcelain with delicate Roman numerals, and the hands were shaped like tiny leaves. Even to my untrained eye, it was clearly very old and very valuable. Beneath the watch was a sealed envelope with my name written in Robert's careful handwriting. I opened the letter with shaking hands. My dearest Mary, if you are reading this, then something has happened that has placed you in a difficult situation. I hoped you would never need to open this box, but I wanted to make sure you always had options. Always had independence, no matter what life brought your way. The watch belonged to my great-grandfather, Charles Matthews. It was made by Patek Philippe in 1895 and has been in our family for over a century. My father gave it to me before he passed, just as his father gave it to him. I never told you about it because I wanted it to be your secret, your insurance policy, your escape plan if you ever needed one. I researched extensively after my father's death, and similar watches have sold at auction for between $800,000 and $1.2 million. Mary, if you are reading this, sell the watch. Use the money to buy your freedom, your independence, your security. Do not let anyone control your life or your choices. You are stronger and wiser than you realize, and you deserve to live on your own terms. Take the watch to Harrison and Associates Antique Appraisals in Hartford. Ask for Margaret Harrison. I contacted her years ago and explained the situation. She will authenticate the watch and help you sell it through the proper channels. I love you more than words can express. Even though I am not there with you physically, this watch represents my promise that I will always take care of you, always give you options, always ensure your independence. Live freely, my love. Live boldly. Live the life you choose. All my love, forever. Robert. P.S. Do not trust anyone with this information until the sale is complete. Unexpected financial gains make people behave in unexpected ways. I read the letter 3 times before the full impact sank in. This watch, sitting innocently on its velvet bed, was potentially worth over $1 million. Robert had secretly preserved a family heirloom for decades, waiting for the moment when I would need it most. And I needed it now. The next morning, I hailed a taxi and made the hour-long trip to Hartford. Harrison and Associates was located in a historic district, in a building that looked like it had stepped out of a Charles Dickens novel. Inside, glass cases displayed jewelry, silverware, and artifacts that whispered stories of centuries past. Margaret Harrison was a woman my age, with silver hair neatly pinned into an elegant bun and sharp, intelligent eyes behind wire-framed glasses. When I introduced myself, her face lit up with recognition. "Mary Matthews," she said warmly. "Robert reached out to me about 15 years ago. He was incredibly thorough in his research and very concerned about your future financial security. I've been expecting you, though I hoped we would never meet under these circumstances." I briefly explained my situation. The loss of my home, the financial arrangement that left me dependent on my daughter and son-in-law, the feeling of being trapped and powerless. Margaret listened with the kind of attention that only comes from years of dealing with family financial crises. When I finished, she nodded gravely. "Let me see the watch," she said. I opened the wooden box with trembling hands. Margaret put on a pair of magnifying glasses and examined the watch under a bright light, turning it carefully and studying every detail. "Oh my," she murmured. "Oh my God. Is it authentic?" I asked. Margaret looked at me, her eyes shining with excitement. "Mrs. Matthews, this isn't just authentic. This is extraordinary. This is an 1895 Patek Philippe minute repeater, one of only 50 ever made. The serial number indicates it was part of a special commission for American railroad executives." She continued her examination, consulting several reference books and making detailed notes. "The condition is remarkable," she said. "It's been beautifully preserved. Someone took extraordinary care of this piece. How much is it worth? I asked, afraid to get my hopes up. Margaret removed her magnifying glasses and looked at me seriously. Mrs. Matthews, based on recent auction results for similar pieces, I would estimate this watch is worth between $1.4 million and $1.8 million. I nearly fainted. $1.8 million. Sitting there in that small wooden box hidden in Robert's workshop for decades. However, Margaret continued, there are some complexities we need to discuss. A watch of this caliber and value requires very careful handling. We'll need to document its provenance, obtain multiple authentication certificates, and find the right auction house or private collector. How long will that take? I asked. Probably 3 to 4 months to do it properly. But Mrs. Matthews, if you need immediate funds, I can arrange a bridge loan against the appraised value of the watch. You could have access to several $100,000 within a week. My head was spinning. After months of feeling powerless and dependent, I suddenly had access to more money than I had ever dreamed of. What would you recommend? I asked. Margaret paused for a moment. Given your situation, I think a combined approach would be best. We'll arrange a bridge loan to give you immediate financial freedom, and simultaneously begin the process of selling the watch for its full value. Over the following week, Margaret worked her magic. The watch was authenticated by 3 different experts, appraised at $1.6 million, and used as collateral for an $800,000 bridge loan. Now I had more money than I knew what to do with. But I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. First, I hired an attorney, not the family lawyer who handled the house sale, but an independent attorney specializing in elder law and financial recovery. When I explained my situation, he was horrified. Mrs. Matthews, what your daughter and son-in-law did borders on financial abuse. The way they pressured you, isolated you from your support systems, and then took control of your assets. This is textbook elder exploitation. Can I get my money back? I asked. Possibly, he said. But more importantly, we can establish your financial independence going forward. You are competent, capable of managing your own affairs, and you have the right to control your own money. The legal process took several weeks, but eventually, we were able to dissolve the trust and return control of the proceeds from the sale of my house to me. Sarah and David were furious but had no legal standing to contest the decision. During this time, Margaret successfully sold the watch at auction. The final price was $1.7 million, higher than her initial estimate. With nearly $2.4 million at my disposal, I was no longer the helpless elderly woman who had been manipulated into giving up her independence. I left Sunset Manor and purchased a beautiful condominium in a retirement community that offered independence rather than dependence. My new home had 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, a balcony overlooking a lake, and most importantly, it was mine. But the money was only part of my liberation. The true gift Robert left me was the knowledge of my own strength and worth. I began volunteering with a local organization that helped seniors avoid financial scams and abuse. I shared my story, warned others about the tactics I had experienced, and helped several families recognize similar patterns in their own lives. 6 months after opening Robert's wooden box, I received an unexpected call from Sarah. "Mom," she said, her voice small and uncertain, "David and I have been thinking. Maybe we were too protective with your finances. We were just concerned about you." I listened without responding. "We miss you," she continued. "We were hoping you'd come to dinner this Sunday. Like old times." "Sarah," I said gently, "I love you. You are my daughter and that will never change. But trust is something that has to be rebuilt. Piece by piece, action by action." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I am not the helpless old woman you thought you were protecting. I am not a problem to be managed or a burden to be handled. I am your mother and I deserve to be treated with respect and honesty." There was a long silence. "I know we made mistakes," Sarah finally said. "Yes, you did. But mistakes can be forgiven and relationships can be repaired. It will just take time." That conversation was 3 months ago. Sarah and I have been slowly rebuilding our relationship. She's beginning to understand that her attempt to protect me almost destroyed me. David has been less forthcoming with apologies, but he's learning to treat me as an equal rather than a problem to be solved. I still live in my beautiful condominium overlooking the lake. I've made new friends, pursued hobbies I never had time for when maintaining a large house, and discovered aspects of myself I didn't know existed. But the most important thing I've learned is that sometimes the people who say they love us the most can cause the greatest harm, not out of malice, but because of their own fears and assumptions about what we need. Robert's wooden box didn't just contain a valuable watch. It held his faith in my strength, his belief in my ability to take care of myself, and his promise that I would always have choices. Every morning when I wake up in my own bed, in my own home, with my own money in my own bank account, I think of that wooden box and the man who loved me enough to plan for my independence even after his death. The watch is gone, sold to a collector who will treasure it as much as Robert's family did for over a century. But the true treasure, my freedom, my dignity, my independence, that is mine forever. I am 74 now, and I am just beginning to understand who Mary Matthews truly is when she is not defined by the expectations and fears of others. And let me tell you, she is stronger than anyone ever imagined. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't money or possessions. Sometimes it's the gift of knowing that someone believes in your ability to take care of yourself, to make your own decisions, to live life on your own terms. Robert gave me that gift, hidden in a wooden box for more than 3 years, waiting for the moment I would need it most. And when that moment came, I was ready. I've always been ready. I just needed to be reminded. Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your perspective. And if this story made you reflect, like the video and subscribe to the channel to follow more real, intense stories like this one. Because in the end, every story is an opportunity to see life with new eyes.